Are y'all gonna say anything?
Just waiting for
Where's Mark?
just waiting for the introduction.
Where's where's Mark?
Who knows?
Wait a minute. Terry is with us. Walter is
Terry,
with us. I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
hello.
We can.
Or Mark is not with us?
Mark, who is not with us, the gentleman.
The other guest appearance is not here today.
Did he break up with us?
He may have.
Hold on.
If he did, there would be reasons.
I did not receive a message.
That he broke up with you. He's ghosting. Is he ghosting us?
I don't really know what to do. So
He's green lighting. Wait, gaslighting.
welcome to the EMS Wizard podcast. I am your host for this episode.
Can we just stop
Mark.
that? Can we just stop? Can we just stop that? Can we just
Hold on,
stop?
I've got a
That's
podcast
not
book here.
that's not cutting it. That's not cutting it.
Uh,
Our guest tonight is Mr. Walter Meads.
Walter Meads. He's one of the guests. The other guest is not here with us. Well, to be sure, maybe we can pull off an episode without Mark. Maybe we're looking at it wrong. We feel lost without one of our leaders, the founder of the podcast. Actually, maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe we should show that we can pull this off without him. And you know what? We, we no better way to do that than talk about partners. Missing one of our own partners.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe this would be a good opportunity to talk about the influence EMS partners have. Just at least from our stories that we have, we could talk about exactly how they've impacted us and how they get us through the good times, the hard times, or whatnot. So I think that would probably be a good thing that everybody could connect with, since we are actually obviously down a partner on this episode. We're a little lost without our partner. Um, Terry, do you have any recollections of partners and how they impacted you?
Man, I can think of coming to work sometimes, and there's a couple folks who I was partners with over the years who the good thing about your partner is they're a little bit that good partner, that great partner is a little bit counselor, they're a little bit priest, a little bit advisor on any number of things. And sometimes when you would show up to work and you'd be all excited, you'd be stoked, and then, hey, where's my, oh, they're sick today, and early on you would call them at home. I think it's Mark's not with us tonight because Mark would be like, hey guys, what was that like when you had to call somebody's house? You couldn't just text them. But because in Mark's generation or my kids' generation, they're blowing up their texting, they're Snapchatting or whatever. But
Are
where
you
we
trying
would
to say?
call,
Are you trying to say Mark's your kid's age?
yeah,
I
yeah,
think he
baby
tried to
Mark.
say he was like Mark's dad.
That's exactly
What
what
I
I thought
heard.
he was trying to say.
Yeah. He looks
Mark,
up to
listen,
me. He
Mark,
looks up to me like his daddy.
just call him Papa Terry. When you hear this, just
Hmm.
call him Papa Terry.
This Big Papa, if you're gonna say it, say it right.
Oh,
So
I love it when I call you Big Papa.
hold on, let me put my hands in the air. so
Mm.
so so I can think of that good partner a couple times, or that partnership, like we're talking about being lost, and a couple things pop up in my mind. One of them is when my dad died. I was in EMS. I was working as a district supervisor, and just struggling with all different types of things. And my partner, who I was working with at the time, being there for me and just saying, hey, what can I do? And I was like, well, I don't even know, what to ask for. I don't even know what I need. And he had told me, man, when his dad had died, somebody had said, "Hey, what can I do for you?" And he was like, "Yeah, we got this funeral tomorrow. I need somebody to mow grass. I ain't got time to mow my grass." And that's what I would say is that good partner is there for those kind of mundane things, those little things, and then those big things as well.
It doesn't sound
So
like you made an EMS reference either. So to me, it sounds like a partner becomes more personal to you, more or less, not just that professional aspect, but I think that's what gets you through. It isn't I mean, now when I initially was bringing up partners, I'm thinking of that person that's going to be able to check a truck out with you, and you can run a call together, and the next moves. And so, and I think people out there have those folks that they mix well. They're able to work off of each other. But when I heard your story just now, I'm hearing you talk about more of you get personal with it. It becomes a very, family oriented, to where you're talking about these folks know you like that, and they experiences your wins and your losses.
I
yeah,
think
definitely. Go
I
ahead,
think
Walter.
the good partners do that. Sometimes the bad partners may not, but you still have to be able to deal with them and maybe even communicate with them as well. So, I can go back to the days of being a volunteer. You always had different partners. And even in my earlier days of riding on an ambulance, we didn't have assigned partners.
Wait a minute, this was
So
back in the horse and chariot days when y'all were
the horse
dropping
and
the
the horse and
y'all
chariot
didn't
days,
have
yes.
the
The
phone
ring down
tree.
Hush
phone.
your,
Hoy
hush,
hoy,
hush your,
Walter here.
hush your mouse. Where we didn't have assigned partners and we had different partners that you got assigned to every day, or you may even got on a truck with every day. You may not even had a true partner at the beginning of the shift. You just, when the call came out, you may have got on the truck if it was your turn. But later in years, as Terry's going, yeah, because I mean, that's what happened. You may have, there was, four of us or three of us working, and, we rotated calls. It was whoever you got.
That's what I was thinking. And to interrupt you, it was making me think back to my volunteer fire department days,
Oh,
and
so you're
where
old too. Okay.
yes, just like you, but not quite as gray as you. But where I would think back to those volunteer fire department days, and where you never know who was going to show up at the fire department, and that could throw a wrench in plans sometimes.
Yeah, correct. Because I mean, you had to think about, who was I going on a call with? What were the, and I would say I was probably more EMT basic and or an EMTD. Most people out here probably don't even realize there was such a thing as an EMTD, but you didn't know
They saved lives.
who did,
They
you
were
didn't
the
know
real lifesavers.
you didn't know who your partner was at that point that you were going to get, and then you had to think about, okay, what is their quirks or what's not their quirks, or if you got somebody good, you were happy to be able to do that. Um, but in my later years where I had a steady partner, it came just like Terry said, they were, more of a friendship even, and I still communicate with one of those regularly, outside of, and don't work EMS with them anymore, but I still communicate with them outside of work, and that, hey, it was, hey, they knew when my daughter was born, they bought her birthday present. So it was just more than just a work partner. They were a work family member that went with you.
And you develop those coming straight out of school. Sometimes, I think when I look at it from my point of view, it's I didn't come up volunteer. I wasn't in a rescue squad, that kind of thing. So I came into EMS as one of the new guys, and the only really relationship I had was as a student, maybe doing ride along there and learning folks that way, being dependent on other people that were around me that I was already, friends with. And, you sort of just, you have that style of person. And I just remember in the 90s for me, there was a, Generation X intermingling with the baby boomer generation. Sometimes there was, it wasn't the easiest conversations to have in the room. Sometimes it felt like it was a disconnect for different reasons. I probably was the epitome of the paramedic that was cocky and full of himself, and felt like must be some superhero type person. So that
When did
didn't.
that stop? When did that end?
I never said it stopped.
Yeah, I didn't think that it happened.
Uh,
Please continue.
Life is my kryptonite. But so That was a Nickelback reference.
How
No, okay.
do we end up like this? I don't think Kryptonite. I think that's Three Doors Down. That's
Did
not
they not have? I
Nickelback.
thought they had a verse
Yeah,
about kryptonite in one of their songs. Anyway,
I'm gonna
um,
Google it now.
yeah, you have to look that one up. I could be, I could be wrong. But at any rate, making those relationships for somebody that doesn't have that, I think it's easier when I hear Walter tell this story about, hey, being a volunteer, being assigned to somebody, sort of, you're drawing in a volunteer world. Just the way I see it is, you're drawn into that world, but you both have similar interests and you want to be there. It's not necessarily like the job yet. You're there and you have this passion to do something. And in the job world, this is who you got to be with for this amount of time. Maybe it's an FTO. Back then, they didn't have FTOs when I was there. They did have preceptors. They had experienced people. I certainly didn't develop like that type of relationship with them. It remained a student teacher relationship the whole time. So it was like I always knew that was the person or the folks to be around that you wanted to impress or not upset. And then you had the other worker bees that were around you, and you developed those type of bonds and whatnot. So when I think of partners, I look at it from a connection standpoint of things. A lot of that's pop culture. In the first days, I remember the way the day went is you came in, you checked your truck off, you washed it, and then you went and watched Jerry Springer. And that was the order of the day in the very beginning. That was
we went
Walter,
and had
don't act like
breakfast.
y'all didn't watch it.
We
Y'all didn't
went and
watch
had
Jerry Springer?
we went and had breakfast. That's the next thing that we did is we checked the truck off, got the station duties done, and we had breakfast.
Went and
That was
had it or made it there?
We didn't make breakfast often. We did make breakfast. We didn't make breakfast often. We went out as a family together because we could at that point in time, and we all went and had breakfast together. And there was this little place across the street from the EMS station that we could all run across the street to and still be right there by the station and the hospital and had breakfast. So, that's typically what we did. Or, we were next door to the hospital, so we could go into the hospital and go get breakfast. So it was easy for us to get breakfast. So that's what our priority list was. Check the truck off, get station duties done, and then eat. Then we could watch Jerry Springer or whatever we want to watch.
Yeah, and I think we brought breakfast in with us when you came in to work. We started late. I think I want to say 8:00 start time for us. So you're later in the day. To me, I mean, whereas some of them are like 6 and 7.
We started at 6 a.m. So
It was specifically a rule. We were not allowed to go to breakfast.
huh.
So that's the way it
Those
was
rules.
in Germany
Those rules, but
when you started in
those
Germany.
rules. Yes. What are you even talking? These rules that have somebody's name on it. I don't know whose name was attached to it, but somebody who probably was showing up not checking off the truck.
One of your partners, no doubt.
Well, that's interesting, Terry, because one county that I worked for a couple of years, you could not actually take an ambulance to go get lunch, breakfast, dinner, or whatever, but you could take the zone car and go do it. And I was
What?
like, you could take the zone car and go do it, but we can't take the ambulance to go do it. That doesn't make any sense. Why would I not want to be with my other crew member in case I got a call? Oh no, take the zone car and go get it and come back. And then if you get a call, we'll just wait for you. I was like, that is crazy. But they were the same way. You couldn't go. Don't take an ambulance. Don't take an ambulance. Can't take an ambulance.
Did you ever have a partner to where initially when you come in there, it just didn't get along and it took effort to grow it and it became BFFs before it was over with? Or did you always you ended up having a conflict with someone, it remained conflict, and you just did not make out good partners from that?
So I had one time I had an older partner, and it was
Older than you?
much older than me.
One that fed the dinosaurs.
Like much older than me. And
Didn't think that was possible.
he was a little different and quirky already. People didn't, I can't say people didn't like to work with him, but people didn't like to be with him for 12 hours. So I end up getting stuck with him for a while at the end after him and his partner couldn't get along. And then I had to ride with him, for a couple months.
forget
And
y'all did the 12-hour shift, and that probably makes a difference versus
yes, correct.
for me that was a 24-hour shift.
Me
And
too.
Correct.
yeah,
So remember in those years, so this is early years, so this is like in 2000, probably like 2000, 2001, give or take.
I was already
And
an experienced medic by then.
yeah.
so was
And
I.
it may have been even in the late 90s. And we only worked 12-hour shift because at 6 p.m. and 7 p.m., the volunteers came in. So we only worked 12-hour shifts. So we worked 6A to 6P, or that agency I worked 6A to 7P. So we worked 13-hour shifts, and the volunteers came in at 7 p.m. So, I worked with him for 13 hours, and sometimes it was in remote locations, not around anybody. So you found stuff to do. Hey, I went to school. I went to school and got my associate's degree, because that's what I could spend my time on while I was out there. So
Those were the tough days when you would be at a
correct.
remote work site, that remote station, just you and your partner, that one truck station. And especially, for in the 90s or early 2000s, the internet wasn't like what it is now. And
It
so
was, I don't remember the internet then, really, if you want me to be honest with you, other than a dial up. I don't remember having internet. I don't even know that we had internet really.
it was that dial up, that AOL instant
Correct. That
messenger,
96.6 kilobytes per second.
Qualcomm. Yeah.
But yeah, that was but we got along. I mean, we were able to get along okay, and I was able to do it. I mean, I sucked it up and just did it, and some quirky things that he did that I, didn't care for, but I had to do just to suck it up. I'm sure I did quirky things, as being a young buck, and him. I mean, there was probably 40 years difference between us. I mean, I was probably in my 20s and he was probably in his 60s or so. So, I mean, there was a big span difference of age between us. So, very quirky things that he liked to do I was like, why are we doing this for? This don't make any sense. But it's the way
But
they
those
always did it.
quirky things, sometimes, as a young paramedic, I was 20 years old when I got my paramedic, and found myself working with older folks. And here I am in charge as the paramedic with somebody who was, 5, 10, 15, 20 years older. A couple times I'll be working with people that had grandchildren, a couple years younger than me, and their kids older than me. And there was a lot of learning that happened in with those folks, because I just didn't understand certain things, and that experienced paramedic at work, or that experienced partner rather, would kind of take me under the wing, and point out those things. And so what I would say is that really good partner, that's that person who's there for you when things are going really good, or when the chips are down, and they're able to kind of put their arm around you and to say, hey, we need to be doing this, not that. Let me show you why. Let me explain to you. And some of those really good partners, and at this point in the career, some of them are rest in peace. That they had that ability to put that arm around my shoulder.
Well, not only that, they knew when you were struggling and could sense that you were struggling when you walked in the door. They knew those things. They
Yeah.
could sense those things because they had children, so they knew they sensed those things. So they knew, all right, buddy, what's going on today? What's wrong? Something's happened. What's going on? What's happened today?
So this conversation reminds me that knowing that you're struggling. I remember my partner at the time. He and his wife lived where I worked part time. I was working a couple nights a month, for somebody else as a paramedic, and he lived in that district, and so I'd go by his house almost every night that I worked. And he'd always call to his wife. I'm trying to remember, Helen, I think was her name. Hey, do we have any leftovers? We got a little bit of leftovers. And I look at things now in my 40s. It wasn't leftovers. When they would make dinner, he knew that I was working that night, and I didn't have a whole lot of money. I'm working this extra extra job to pay for, wife and new baby. And so that partner was literally giving me dinner, literally taking me to race, taking care of me.
Yeah, and going back to the original question, the reason I was looking at it or asking about those you maybe initially were wary about is that seemed to be the ones that I would find myself having the strongest relationships with. I would walk in, I'd start. I mean, I maybe just am hard to get along with in the beginning, but I
Do what?
wasn't. and
Yeah.
and and what I mean is, as coming in, just in general, learning the ropes of a new place or whatnot. I sensed a lot of times that maybe that older generation just did not have a lot of desire to want to help anybody. At least in a couple of the agencies that I had been at, and it's like, it's not my job, man, figure it out. And a really big thrown to the wolves mentality. I won't say that I relished that, but it was what I was given. Many people were given that whole, you'll figure it out if you don't, then you won't be here. So, but because of that, I was able to persevere and get through some of those things. It sort of built a little bit respect. And so then I took it, I took that as a challenge as to, let me see if I can connect with these folks, try to find out what makes them tick, try to see if I can get them to pull over and be more, hey, be helpful in this situation. And I think that's what maybe put me on my trajectory to get to where I'm at today, because I always looked at it as, I look internally, if I'm the regular young punk kid coming in and this is how I'm being received, how can that changed me if I was on the other side? Like, do I put that off as well? Or do I learn from that and say, that's how I'm going to be? I'm going to put everybody, throw them to the wolves or whatnot. But I spent my time trying to figure out, how to grow myself, how to, even though I might have this conflict with a partner, how can I make that stronger? And it was successful. And some of the best relationships I've got through my career were from people that when I initially met them, we did not get along. So that's why I asked if that was more of just a me thing, or if you guys seen that same thing.
So back then, and let's just use 20 years. Let's go back 20 years. Those older people were struggling with us, the younger
Right.
kids.
Yeah, right.
What are we doing? What are we doing today? We're back doing the same thing. We're struggling with the younger kids today. So when those old school kids were kids, their people were struggling with them as well. And I've heard my grandfather say, struggling with one of the EMS directors he had was a young punk. He used to call him, like, this young punk director that I got. So, much younger than him. So he was struggling then. Then those guys were struggling with me, and now here we go struggling with some of the younger kids. So it's just generation to generation to generation. We just have to figure out how we can help each other out. So you guys that are listening on here, we just got to figure out how we can help each other out, because we're going to be in the same boat. They're going to be in the same boat, just by passing it down. So sharing information the best you can.
So, John, something you were saying a couple minutes ago about working with some of these people. And so, do you think it was your effort? Do you think it was their effort? Do you think it was that combined effort, that synergy of y'all? Hey, let's bridge this gap, or what do you think? What do you think made you successful with some of those partnerships, where that person was off-putting?
I think it's a good question. Which is rare for you. You usually don't have good questions, but thank you for that one. The thing that I would say is, today, I believe people probably do come 50-50, 75-25, some effort. I can honestly tell you that coming through there, they 100% would go in their room, close the door, did not, my experience, did not care one iota about trying to help the next generation come through. This is not speaking, obviously, I'm not speaking for every person that was out there then. I'm just speaking to my experience. It could have been just the culture of the organization. So I know it was the effort that I made to try to do that. And it was really, you're going to get what you asked for. So if I was prodding the animal to speak, then I expect a roar, and I would get that. And so sometimes that made them be a little meaner, a little tougher. But I also looked at it as, oh, I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. And I'll get through it, kind of thing. And I was the whole time loading up, trying to figure out, now, how do I not be that way? How do I not do that? And so that when that day came that I had a student, and that day did come very young in my career, where I basically got my paramedic, and then the program director at the time at the community college was like, we need help. We want young, new blood to come in and really help with our classes so they can connect with them. I've carried that. Walter will tell you, teaching with me and stuff, that I've always been like, let's hire the people that graduate our programs. I believe Walter has some of that belief in his system too. Just because you want somebody to do that, I practiced that my whole career, of like, hire the ones you raised up, that you taught. And I just I try to utilize that as why we would, try to be different and be better. So I did make the efforts. I had a different agenda, though. I was trying to understand. And I don't know that people come in the systems today trying to understand. They're just there. They don't know to try to understand something. And I just did. I mean, I just was just trying to understand.
So mindfulness, you had to be aware and mindful that, hey, maybe what I'm doing is off-putting, or hey, maybe what they're doing I think is weird, but maybe that's them trying to offer that, to build that bridge.
Well, I did share,
build that relationship.
I talked to the other folks that got it, because when we got hired in pools. So there was like 10 of us that came in together. And then a few weeks later, it'd be another 10 that came in together. So I'd go to the other 10 and ask, how's your experience with XYZ? And they'd be like, they'd share this experience, and it'd be just a little different. Several of them might like to hunt and fish. I didn't hunt or fish. And so they had a connection that they were able to do that. My only connection was I can't remember if it's 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. We sat down and we watched Jerry Springer. And when that was a connection point, is we would watch that, and I would see how they'd interact with just that TV show. And it's kind of like, oh, okay. Because ordinarily, I can tell you that John Wilson sitting at home watching Jerry Springer would probably change the channel and move on from watching that. But in that group,
sometimes
I learned,
you got to change that channel.
I'll tell you another thing. Do you remember? It used to come out at the movie theaters, and if you remember this, you probably remember better than I do. And if you don't remember, I know who does. His name is Keith. Y'all haven't met him, but he and I used to.
What did John used to do?
Go to the movie theaters. You'd have to go at midnight and watch this thing called Faces of Death.
Rocky Horror Picture
Do you
Show.
remember Faces of Death? You ever heard of it?
Not at the movie theater. I remember it like on the internet early on with some stuff.
This would have been before the internet, man. So what they would do is you would pay for this ticket to go in, like, I don't know, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And if you stayed through, I think the way it was, if you stayed through and didn't leave, they gave you your money back. Because most people would leave during the thing. Like it would show. And at the time, it was a whole lot like Blair Witch Project. When Blair Witch Project came out, there was a little bit of that. Man, is this real? Like, was this really like a tape found? And they kind of spun it that way. And, this is before internet and social media where you can sit there and just say straight up fake news now. But back then there was a little bit of this. Is this a movie or was this like a real thing? Well, this was a lot like that. And anyway, the point was, that Faces of Death thing gave you stuff that you hadn't seen before. It made you uncomfortable. It showed, all kinds of different things that was gross or whatnot. And, just death videos, and maybe some was real, maybe some was fake, but you didn't know. It was just a big collection of those things now. And so I think society's become desensitized a lot now, but in 1996, 1997, it wasn't that way. And so, being able to go say, I went and saw Faces of Death in the movie theater, and then you come back and you talk about that, gave you some street cred. Like, oh, you watched that?
Was Keith your partner? Were you guys partners?
I honestly cannot remember if me and him ever worked on a truck together. Ever.
I don't know if this was when y'all were together that you were going. going to the movies.
We
or
were,
not.
we were only best friends. That was it. We were just best friends.
So-
we were never partners.
So what I'm hearing from you is a good partner pushes you, a good best friend pushes you to, because if we were to say, hey, some people who I would say best friends other than here on the podcast, and Keith, of course, who's not with us tonight.
I'm not y'all's best friend. I'm
But,
just a guest.
I think the Facebook picture was best friends, Walter.
Oh, was
You're
it?
included.
Okay.
Mrs.
Okay.
Sheehy actually says I should replace John as my best friend with you because she says that you're nicer and you're kinder.
Even though I'm a guest appearance.
Exactly.
Dang, Wilson.
Mrs. Sheehy throws rocks at me when you're not looking. If we're standing around and
As she should.
you think all is good, then you
As
turn
she
around,
should.
she reaches down and she chunks
She
rocks at me. And I just take it. I take it for the team. I take it for team John and Terry. It's just
Thank
who
you.
I
That's
am.
what a best friend. That's what a real best friend does.
Yeah,
So let's wrap this topic up because
a real best friend would throw
starting to-
rocks back. A second best friend takes the rock, just so you know.
Well, I don't know what Keith does when we're at dinner, but anyways. So a good partner pushes you, a good best friend pushes you, maybe to grow, to look at things differently.
Unless you're standing
what I'm hearing?
on a cliff, a good partner hopefully would not push you. Standing at the train tracks, looking at the train, I could see a second best friend.
That's not the
you.
wind. That's not the wind pushing you back. It's the Holy Ghost, son.
As it should be.
Y'all have got all over this track tonight. It has been all over the place. Mark has got a lot of editing to do.
Walter, I never made it as a wise man, and I couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing.
Repeat that again.
Never
say it in a
made
song.
it as a wise man. Couldn't cut it as a poor man stealing. I'm tired of living like a blind man. I'm sick of sight without a sense of feeling, and this is how you remind me.
I'm so glad you're reading that from somewhere.
Am I, or do I just have it memorized?
Well, you were looking at a screen for a little while, so I'm assuming you were reading it.
I wanted to make sure I didn't screw it up. Thank you for embarrassing me.
See.
That's what a terrible best friend does.
See, exactly.
Point out them flaws. Strong word,
Yeah.
Mr. Means.
What a jerk.